The millionaire paused mid-sip when he saw her limping from table to table. A young waitress balancing plates with one hand and a prosthetic leg with the other. She hid her pain behind a tired smile. Customers ignored her struggle. Her manager barked orders without a hint of mercy. But when she tripped and caught herself before falling, the entire diner went silent. The millionaire stood up slowly. What he did next left everyone speechless. Before we begin, subscribe to our channel and comment where you are watching from so we can bring more stories like these. By the time the sun even thought about coming up, Emily Carter was already awake. Her alarm went off at 4:30 a.m. sharp. Same cheap ringtone, same cracked screen lighting up the dark room like a weak flashlight. She didn't hit snooze. She never did. Rent didn't care if you were tired, and neither did medical bills. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, out of habit. 1 foot, one hollow clink. Her left leg ended just above the knee. The prosthetic leaned against the side of the bed where she'd left it the night before, like a tired soldier waiting to be called back into battle. She paused for just a second, fingers pressing into her eyes. "All right, Em," she whispered to herself. "Let's go." She reached for the prosthetic, sliding the socket onto the scarred stump, tightening the straps with practiced, efficient movements. There was no ceremony to it anymore, no dramatic music, just her, plastic, metal, and a world waiting outside. And another day. The tiny apartment was quiet, too quiet. Down the hall, a bedroom door was cracked open. Inside, a lanky teenage boy was sprawled sideways across the bed, headphones still around his neck, mouth slightly open in the kind of deep sleep only kids and people with no bills could have. Her little brother, Noah. She peeked in and smiled softly. "Hey, Trouble," she whispered, even though he couldn't hear her. "Don't miss the bus today, okay?" She pulled the door in just enough to keep the hallway light out and limped gently into the main room, the rhythm of her gait subtle but always there. Step, clink, step, clink. She tried to keep the sound light so it wouldn't echo. Small town, thin walls, thin patience. The living room and kitchen were basically the same space. One old couch, a low table with a stack of unopened mail, and a kitchen area with mismatched cabinets and a fridge that hummed like it had asthma. Emily opened the fridge. Half a carton of eggs, 3 slices of bread, a carton of milk with a date she didn't want to acknowledge yet. She grabbed the eggs and bread. She'd skip breakfast at the diner. Maybe snag a crust of toast from the side. The customers ate like kings. The staff picked around the edges. She cracked eggs into a pan, the sizzle a small comfort in the quiet apartment. 1 for Noah. 1 for Noah. 1. Nope, not enough for her. She stirred them gently, browned the toast, slid everything onto a chipped plate, and covered it with foil. She placed it on the table with a note scribbled on a receipt envelope. Eat. Don't be late. E. She glanced at the pile of mail as she put the pen down. 1 envelope with red ink shouting "Final Notice." Another with a medical logo she recognized too well. A third with her name in all caps from the prosthetics clinic. She picked that one up, thumb tracing over her name. She didn't open it. Not today. She grabbed her worn black shoes from beside the door and slipped them on. The sole on the left one had worn thin. The right one always held up longer, less pressure on it. She shrugged on her uniform, a faded diner polo and black pants she'd hemmed herself. The pants always fit weird around the prosthetic, but she made do. She tied her hair up into a messy bun, scrubbed her face with cold water, and leaned close to the mirror above the sink. Brown eyes, light bags under them. freckles across her nose. Still cute, she told her reflection with a crooked smile. Just exhausted. She grabbed her bag and keys, glanced one last time at the closed door to Noah's room, and stepped outside. The morning air was crisp, the sky still half asleep. Town was quiet, only a couple cars on the road, a street light flickering, like it was thinking about giving up. She walked to work. They had a bus, technically, but she preferred to keep those coins. Her prosthetic leg's soft click on the sidewalk kept time with her thoughts. Step, clink. Step, clink. She walked slightly slower when she knew she'd be seen. It made the limp less noticeable. The diner sat on the corner of Main and Oak, the kind of place that looked like it had been there forever. A rectangular neon sign flickered, Mason's Diner in red, half the S burnt out. The front windows fogged up in the winter, smelling like coffee, bacon, and people who'd already lived half a life before 9 a.m. Emily loved it and hated it at the same time. It was where she made her money. It was where she ran herself into the ground. She pushed open the door. A small bell jingled. The smell of burnt coffee and yesterday's grease wrapped around her. "Morning, Em," called out Janice, the cook, from behind the pass window. "You're early. Again." "Morning," Emily smiled, dropping her bag in the back and tying on an apron. "You know me. If I'm not here early, I'm here on time." Janice snorted. "You should teach that to half this town." The manager, Greg Mason, the owner's son, poked his head around the office door, coffee in hand, shirt already untucked. "You're here," he said, like he was surprised she'd shown up, even though she always did. "Good. We're short today. Gina called in sick again." Emily just nodded. "I can take her tables." Greg raised an eyebrow. "You sure? That's the whole front half, plus your section. It's a lot of ground, Em." Her jaw tensed just a little. "I can handle it." He shrugged. "Your legs, your life." She felt the jab, but she let it slide like always. She moved through the empty diner, wiping down tables, straightening salt shakers, flipping mugs over on saucers. The prosthetic leg squeaked once as she turned. She paused, pressing her fingers into the joint. "Come on," she whispered down at it. "Don't start today." By 7 a.m., the regulars began shuffling in. Old Mr. Harris at booth 2, who always complained about the weather but tipped well. The trucker twins, who laughed too loud and drank coffee like water. The local cop, who pretended not to notice when someone couldn't pay the full bill. Emily moved between them like a practiced dance. Menu tucked under her arm, pen behind her ear, smile at the ready. "Morning, y'all. Coffee? Want your usual today, Mr. Harris? Y'all want your eggs running for their lives or fully cooked today?" They chuckled. They asked about Noah. They told her she was such a sweet girl. None of them saw the way her shoulders sagged when she turned away. None of them saw the pain that flashed across her face when she shifted weight wrong on the prosthetic. She didn't let them. Around 8:15, as the breakfast rush thinned and the late stragglers rolled in, the bell over the door jingled again. He stepped in like he didn't quite belong there, but wasn't judging it either. Tall, early 30s, dark hair, neat but not fussy. Crisp dress shirt rolled to the forearms, no tie. Expensive watch that didn't match the chipped countertop and cracked vinyl booths. He looked around the diner like he was studying it, not like some city guy disgusted by it. Just taking it in. Daniel Brooks. He picked a corner booth near the window, away from the groups. Somewhere he could see the room. Emily grabbed a menu, pasted on her server smile, and walked over. "Hey there," she said. "You want coffee to start? We got the regular stuff, and the stuff that tastes like it might put hair on your soul." He chuckled, a low sound. "Regular's fine, thanks." His eyes flicked down for half a second, just long enough to notice the way she shifted on her feet, the subtle drag in her left side, the way she angled herself so her right leg always took more of the weight. She caught the glance. At the counter, her coworker Gina finally showed up for the afternoon shift, sunglasses still on, hair unbrushed. "Well," Gina scoffed, blowing a bubble with her gum, "if it isn't Little Miss Limp. You should really chill with the whole I can do everything alone act. This job might not be for you." Emily didn't respond. It wasn't worth the fight. Gina rolled her eyes dramatically. "Ugh, whatever. Some of us like having fun on our days off, you know?" Emily tied her apron tighter. "Some of us like paying bills on time," Gina clicked her tongue. "Your problem, not mine." Daniel, seated in his corner booth, noticed the entire exchange. His jaw flexed. As Emily refilled Daniel's coffee, she moved too quickly again. The prosthetic slipped a centimeter, just enough to make her grip the table. He lowered his mug slowly. "You all right?" She nodded quickly. Too quickly. "Yeah, just need to tighten the strap again. Happens a lot." "Does it hurt?" he asked gently. She froze for a beat. Her smile didn't falter, but her spine stiffened. "Just passing through?" she asked, setting the menu down. "Business trip," he replied. "Thought I'd try the local classic." She laughed softly. "Classic's a nice way to say old and sticky, but we'll take it." He smiled at that. Her prosthetic squeaked as she turned away. She pretended not to hear it. Daniel noticed. He noticed everything. He watched her move across the diner, how she cleared 3 tables alone, while another waitress, perfectly able-bodied, leaned against the counter scrolling her phone. He watched her refill coffees before anyone had to ask. He watched her apologize for things that weren't her fault. Slow kitchen orders, lukewarm fries, somebody's bad mood. He watched her flinch only when Greg snacked, "Emily, those plates aren't going to walk themselves out." He saw the way she swallowed back a retort and forced her lips into that same gentle smile. Hour after hour, she kept moving. She rarely stopped. If she was tired, she hid it. If she was hurting, she buried it. At one point, he lifted his mug slightly. She hurried over a little too quickly. Her left foot landed just a hair off from where she meant it to. The prosthetic slipped, not enough to knock her down, but just enough to throw her balance. Her hand shot out, grabbing the edge of his table. The mug tipped, but didn't fall. "Whoa," she breathed, heart racing. Sorry, my bad. I'm good. "Nah, you're all right," he said calmly, voice grounding. "You okay?" For half a second, the truth surged up behind her eyes. "No, I'm not. I'm tired. It hurts. I'm scared all the time. I'm hanging on by this much." But she swallowed it back like she always did. "Yeah," she said with a quick nod. "Just clumsy today. Happens." No one else in the diner looked up. Nobody offered a hand or even a glance. Except him. He watched her steady herself, tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, and limp away just a bit more carefully this time. His jaw tightened. He lifted his coffee again, sipping slowly, eyes following the girl with the squeaky prosthetic and the 2 big responsibilities. He didn't know everything yet. Not about her brother. Not about the past accident. Not about the medical bills waiting on that low table in her apartment. But he knew this. She wasn't just tired. She was carrying more than anyone in that diner had bothered to see. And somewhere, deep in the quiet place where instinct made decisions before logic caught up, Daniel Brooks decided one thing. He wasn't just going to watch. He was going to do something. He just didn't know yet how big that something would turn out to be. By lunchtime, the diner was buzzing with the usual noise, forks clinking, conversations overlapping, the friars hissing like they had something to complain about. But through all the noise, one sound kept cutting through the room every few minutes. Clink, squeak, clink, squeak. Emily's prosthetic. No matter how carefully she shifted her weight, no matter how softly she tried to step, the joint near the knee had started rubbing metal on metal this week. It was faint, but in a quiet enough moment, it was impossible to ignore. And people noticed. A middle-aged couple in the back booth exchanged looks as she passed. The woman whispered, "They let handicapped people work here?" Her husband shrugged. "Guess they're desperate." Emily heard them, pretended she didn't. She set down their plates gently. "Here y'all go. Let me know if you need anything." The woman didn't say thank you. She didn't even look up. It stung, but Emily had learned a long time ago that kindness wasn't something people gave out fairly. She turned, adjusting her steps to keep the squeak quiet. Behind her, coins clattered onto the table. She didn't have to look to know it was their tip. 2 quarters, a nickel, 30 cents. Her throat tightened, but she kept walking. The next table over had its own brand of cruelty. 2 teenage girls scrolling on their phones, filming their milkshakes. "She walks so weird," one whispered. "Shh," the other giggled. "Don't be mean." Pause. "Record it, though? It's kinda funny." Emily passed them with the coffee pot, her cheeks heating. Kids could be cruel without even realizing it. Adults had no excuse. She poured coffee for the new customers at table 7. A trucker and his buddy, fresh off the highway and smelling like dust and gasoline. "Thanks, sweetheart," one said. "You limpin' 'cause of the shoes or something?" Emily forced a smile. "Something like that." The other man chuckled. "Bet the boss makes you walk too much. Poor thing." She didn't answer. Sometimes silence was safer than the truth. By 2 p.m., the exhaustion had settled deep into her bones. Double shifts were already hard, but double shifts with a worsening prosthetic? It felt like dragging a cement block behind her. She tried adjusting the strap in the back hallway behind the drink station, hoping it might quiet the joint. Greg, the manager, chose that exact moment to walk by. "What are you doing?" he snapped. "We got tables waiting." She straightened quickly. "Sorry, Greg. My leg is just—" "I don't want to hear about your leg," he cut in. "Just move faster. Your section is dragging." She blinked twice, swallowing the words that almost slipped out. "I'm doing the job of 2 people, and I'm still behind? Maybe hire someone instead of yelling at me." But she didn't. Instead, she said, "Yes, sir," and hurried past him, careful not to limp too visibly. Greg called after her, "And smile more. Customers don't like depressing servers." She smiled. Not for him, for survival. "Only when I move," she said with a tiny laugh. "So, always." He didn't laugh. He didn't pity her. He just watched, quiet and steady. "You shouldn't have to work like this," he said softly. She shrugged. "It's life. My brother needs the money. Rent needs the money. Hospital bills need the money. Complaining won't change that." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm fine," she repeated, but her voice wavered around the edges. "If you need help—" "No," she interrupted quickly. "I'm used to doing things alone." He didn't push, but he kept watching, closely. By dinner prep, the diner was full again. Families, teens, tourists, and regulars. Greg barked orders from the back. Dishes clattered, conversations rose and fell. And through it all, clink, squeak, clink, squeak. A couple of teenagers near the jukebox started mimicking the sound every time she passed. Clink, squeak, clink, squeak. Their table howled with laughter. Emily's face burned. Her hands trembled as she placed their milkshakes down. One of them snickered. "Careful not to tip over, robo-girl." She forced a smile, her throat tight. "Enjoy your shakes." They didn't hear the strain in her voice, or didn't care. At the booth near the window, Daniel put down his fork. He had been patient. He had been observant. He had been polite. But as he watched Emily wipe a table with shaking hands, her limp worsening with every step, her shoulders tightening under the weight of too many insults, something cold settled into his expression. Not anger, not frustration, determination, the kind that came right before a turning point. He wasn't sure how yet, or when, but he knew this. He wasn't leaving this town without doing something for her. Something real. Something that mattered. Emily didn't know it yet, but the worst moment of her day was about to arrive, and so was the man who would change her future forever. The dinner rush hit like a wave, loud, messy, impatient. The kind of crowd that didn't care how many tables you had, or whether your legs worked properly. They wanted food, fast, hot, and perfect. Emily moved as quickly as she could. Too quickly. The prosthetic had loosened again, every step sending a tiny jolt up her thigh. The squeak had grown louder now, like the limb itself was begging her to slow down. Clink, squeak. Clink, squeak. She ignored it. She always ignored it. There wasn't time not to. "Emily," Greg barked from behind the counter. "Table 9's still waiting." "I'm getting to them." "Get there faster." Her jaw clenched. She carried 4 plates, 2 burgers, a pasta dish, and a tray of fries, with her right arm steadying most of the weight. Her left hand gripped the tray, forearm trembling. She headed toward the booth. Step. Step. Clink. "Dude, she's limping again," a teenager snickered near the jukebox. "Bro, she looks like a glitching NPC. Their tab." Emily kept walking, eyes glued to the plates. She forced a smile at table 9. "Sorry for the wait. Here you go." Her prosthetic slipped. Just half an inch. Just enough to shift her center of gravity. Just enough for her to twist wrong. The tray wobbled. The plates slid, and gravity did the rest. Crash. Food splattered across the booth and floor. Fries flew like confetti. Burgers hit the tiles with a sad thud. A marinara streak splashed across a man's shirt. The diner went silent. Every head snapped toward her. Her face burned. Her pulse pounded. Her hands shook uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, bending down instinctively. The prosthetic squeaked violently as she crouched. Her cheeks flamed hotter. "Unbelievable," the man with the marinara stain muttered. "Are you kidding me?" "Greg," another shouted toward the counter, "your waitress just dumped dinner on us." Emily swallowed hard, reaching for broken plate pieces with trembling fingers. Greg stormed out of the kitchen, face already red with anger. "Emily!" he bellowed, voice echoing through the whole diner. "What the hell was that?" She froze mid-crouch. The room spun. I slipped," she whispered. "My leg?" "Your leg!" Greg shouted, throwing his hands up. "Always an excuse with you!" The teenagers cackled in the back. Emily's throat clenched. Greg continued, louder this time, making sure everyone heard. "You think disability lets you be careless? This is coming out of your paycheck!" Some customers gasped, some looked away, some nodded in agreement. Humiliation burned through her. She wanted to disappear, melt into the tile, become air. "I'll clean it up," she murmured, voice shaking. But Greg wasn't done. He pointed at the prosthetic leg like it was some joke. "Maybe if you didn't drag that thing around, this wouldn't happen." A few people murmured uncomfortably. Someone whispered, "Damn, that was harsh." Someone else whispered, "She shouldn't be working here if she can't move right." Emily's vision blurred. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of the people who already saw her as weak. Greg crossed his arms. Well, clean it up. Emily reached down to gather the broken ceramic. Her hand shook so badly she nearly cut her palm. She didn't see the man standing from the corner booth. Not until the diner fell completely silent. The kind of silence that feels heavy. The kind where everyone holds their breath. The kind that happens right before something big shifts. Daniel Brooks stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, calmly, but there was nothing calm in his eyes. Emily blinked, startled when she saw him standing beside her. He crouched down, not to help her pick up plates, but to look her in the eyes. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. His voice was low, steady, grounding. She shook her head, mortified. "I'm fine. I'm sorry. You shouldn't see this." His jaw tightened. "I've seen enough." He rose to his full height and turned, slowly, toward Greg. The shift in energy was immediate. Greg scoffed. "Can I help you? Because unless you're offering to mop the floor, this isn't your business, buddy." Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You just humiliated her in front of an entire diner," he said, his voice quiet but razor sharp. Greg rolled his eyes. "She dropped food everywhere." "She almost fell," Daniel replied. And you screamed at her," Daniel said. "Mocked her leg, threatened her paycheck, blamed her disability." The room held its breath. A whisper spread. "Who is this guy? He's not from around here. He looks rich." Greg huffed. "Look, pal, she's a liability. She should have been fired months ago. She can't keep up. I'm doing her a favor letting her work here." Emily flinched. Daniel's expression darkened. "She's carrying half the diner alone," he said. "I've watched her. She works harder than anyone here." "She's slow," Greg snapped. Daniel stepped closer, voice dropping to a cold, surgical calm. "She's slower because she's missing a leg." A ripple of gasps. Greg stuttered. "Well, that's not my problem." Daniel cut him off. "It is when you exploit it." Greg's face twisted. "Who even are you? Some wannabe hero? You think you know this place? You think you know her?" Daniel reached into his jacket pocket, but not for money, for a thick, matte black card, a card with a gold emblem in the center. The manager's face dropped instantly. "What is that?" someone whispered. "That's a corporate elite card. He's someone important." Daniel didn't wave it around. He didn't boast or brag. He simply held Greg's gaze as he said, "I know enough, and I'm not done." Emily stared at him, stunned, her breath caught somewhere between fear and hope. Because the diner, her battlefield, her burden, her place of struggle, had just shifted. Someone had stepped into the fire with her. Someone who wasn't afraid of Greg. Someone who wasn't afraid of the humiliation. Someone who wasn't afraid of exposing the cruelty everyone else ignored. Emily didn't know it yet, but this moment, the broken plates, the shattered dignity, the stranger who stood up, was the turning point of her entire life. Everything after this would change. Everything. For a long, suspended second, nobody in the diner moved. Broken plates on the floor, cold fries under the table, marinara on a stranger's shirt. Emily trembling, Greg fuming, Daniel standing between them like a wall that hadn't existed moments ago. People watched with wide eyes, forks paused midair, conversations halted. Even the old jukebox seemed to quiet down, humming at a lower volume, sensing the shift in the room. Then, a scrape of a bar stool broke the silence. An older man at the counter pushed himself up, steadying his weight on a cane. He wore dark slacks, a soft navy sweater, and wire-rimmed glasses that slid down his nose every time he blinked. His presence wasn't loud, but it was solid. The kind of solid that made even silence step aside. He walked toward Emily, slow but purposeful, concern etched across his lined face. "Emily," he said gently. "Sweetheart, are you hurt?" She blinked, startled. "Dr. Lawson? No, I'm fine, I promise." A murmur spread across the diner. Instantly. "Dr. Lawson? Isn't he? Oh wow, he's been a surgeon here for decades. He's one of the best in the state." Greg stiffened, suddenly less confident than he'd been 2 minutes ago. Dr. Henry Lawson, retired orthopedic surgeon, one of the most respected men in 3 counties, knelt down as far as his aging knees allowed and looked at the prosthetic that had scraped the floor. He didn't touch it. He didn't need to. His eyes softened with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. "This is overdue, Emily," he murmured. Emily swallowed. "I know. I just can't." He raised a hand gently to stop her. Then he stood and turned slowly to face the rest of the diner, his voice carrying with the quiet authority of someone used to people listening when he spoke. "Since we're all standing here, watching this poor girl get humiliated," Dr. Lawson said calmly, "let me tell you something about her." Emily's eyes widened. "Dr. Lawson, please," but he continued. "I met Emily when she was 9 years old," he said, voice steady. "She came into my operating room after a collision with a drunk driver. Her leg was crushed beyond saving." Gasps rippled through the booths. Daniel's eyes softened, locking onto Emily's face. Greg crossed his arms defensively, but for the first time, uncertainty flickered in his expression. Dr. Lawson rested a hand lightly on a chair. "Most children would have given up," he said quietly. "But not her. She fought through surgeries, infections, physical therapy. Months of pain I wouldn't wish on anyone." Emily looked down, embarrassed by the attention. "She learned to walk again," Dr. Lawson continued. "She learned to run again. She grew strong. She never once, not once, complained." The diner fell silent, absorbing every word. He glanced meaningfully at the prosthetic. "And yes, before anyone asks, her current leg is outdated. The knee joint is worn down, the socket is loose, and she's overdue for a full replacement." Emily's breath hitched. She hated that the truth was out. She hated needing help. She hated the pity she expected to see in every face. But what she saw was different. Shock, respect, guilt. The teenagers at the jukebox lowered their eyes. The couple who'd tipped her 30 cents stared at the table. Even the truckers looked away, shame creeping into their expressions. Dr. Lawson finished with a quiet firmness that struck harder than any shout. She shouldn't be carrying 4 plates. She shouldn't be double shifting. She shouldn't even be walking this much, not without a better prosthetic. Greg scoffed, trying to recover control. "Look, that's not my problem. I run a business, not a charity." Dr. Lawson turned toward him, eyes narrowing. "And I suppose you think screaming at her improves business?" Greg opened his mouth, but no sound came out. For the first time, he looked small, very small. Daniel took a slow step forward, his expression unreadable. He didn't interrupt, didn't dramatize, didn't grandstand. He simply asked, softly, "Emily, why didn't you tell anyone?" Her throat tightened. Because how could she explain it? How could she tell him she'd already sold her last working laptop for medical bills, that the new prosthetic cost more than 5 months of wages, that she didn't want anyone's pity, that she couldn't risk losing this job because rent didn't pause for injured legs, that she carried her brother's future on her shoulders every single day. She forced a tight smile. "People have problems," she whispered. "Mine aren't special." Dr. Lawson shook his head fiercely. "They are, and you've carried them alone long enough." Greg threw up his hands. "Can we stop acting like she's some saint? She's clumsy. She's slow. She's—" Daniel turned his head toward him so sharply, the manager flinched. "She's working harder than anyone here," Daniel said quietly. "With one good leg, and more dignity than you'll ever understand." Emily closed her eyes briefly, overwhelmed by the sudden support from people she never expected help from. Dr. Lawson stepped forward again. "You want to know strength?" he said, voice trembling with conviction. "It's not in your legs, or your speed, or how many tables you can carry. It's here," he pressed a hand gently to Emily's shoulder, "in how she never gave up." For a moment, the whole diner seemed to breathe as one. Emily felt the room shift around her, felt the weight of years of quiet struggle, suddenly seen, acknowledged, understood. She wasn't invisible anymore. Not today. Not with Daniel watching her like she was someone worth protecting. Not with Dr. Lawson standing beside her, defending her like family. A deep, unfamiliar feeling bloomed in her chest. Hope. The kind that hurt a little, because it had been gone for so long. The air in the diner changed completely now. People weren't just looking at a waitress who dropped plates. They were looking at a survivor, a fighter, a young woman carrying too much and asking for nothing. And as the truth of her story settled around the room, Daniel made a quiet vow in the back of his mind. He wasn't done. Not even close. The diner felt different now. It wasn't the kind of silence that followed a dropped plate or an awkward joke. This one was charged, heavy, humming under people's skin like static before lightning. Emily stood frozen in the middle of it, hands still hovering near the mess on the floor, as if she hadn't quite caught up to the moment. Dr. Lawson stood a few steps behind her, cane planted, jaw set. The teenagers who'd laughed at her went quiet. Even the cook in the back had stopped yelling orders. And right there, in the center of it all, Daniel took a breath. Then he moved. He walked to the dead center of the diner, not to a table, not to a booth, but to the open space between the counter and the seating, right where everyone could see him. He didn't raise his hands, didn't shout, didn't ask for attention. He just stood there, steady, grounded, unshaken, which made everyone in the room focus on him, whether they wanted to or not. Greg let out a strained laugh. "Oh, come on," he said, palms out. "What is this, some kind of performance? I got a business to run. We can't stop every time little Miss Sympathy here." Daniel turned his head slowly. The words died in Greg's throat. "You've overworked her," Daniel said softly. "You've humiliated her. You've ignored her disability. And now you're punishing her for almost falling because of equipment she can't afford to upgrade." Greg scoffed, but it sounded weaker now. "She's not the only one with problems. Half this town is struggling. That doesn't give her a pass to be clumsy." Daniel's expression didn't change, but the air around him seemed to drop a degree. "Clumsy?" he repeated quietly. He turned, glancing at the broken dishes, the smear of marinara, the scattered fries. Then at Emily. She swallowed, hands tightening around the edge of her apron. "She's not clumsy," Daniel said. "She's exhausted." Murmurs rippled across the booths. Dr. Lawson nodded once, his eyes fixed on Greg. "And you," Daniel continued, "have turned that exhaustion into your profit." Greg threw his arms up. "What are you, some kind of activist? You passing through town for a savior complex or something? A few people flinched at the hostility. Sir, one woman at a corner table said quietly, maybe don't talk to him like that. Stay out of it, Greg snapped, without looking at her. Daniel's jaw flexed. He took a single step forward. I tried to mind my business, he said. I really did. I watched her cover half this diner by herself, while your other staff scrolled their phones. I watched her limp, watched her struggle to balance trays she shouldn't be carrying alone. I watched you bark at her like she was the problem. He paused. And I watched you stand still while she almost fell. Greg rolled his eyes. Look, man, you don't run this place. I do. If you don't like it, you can take your little moral speech and... Daniel pulled the black card from his pocket. This time, he held it up just enough for Greg to see clearly. Not waved, not flashed, just revealed. The matte black surface glowed slightly under the diner lights. No cute logo, no bright colors, just a small embossed emblem and a bake name most people only saw in movies. Greg's mouth shut with an audible click. Someone near the door whispered, "Oh, that's one of those unlimited credit cards." Another muttered, "You only get those if you're like crazy rich." Emily stared at the card, a knot forming in her stomach. She hadn't expected that. She'd known he wasn't average, but this? Daniel slipped the card away just as casually as he'd revealed it. I don't usually announce who I am, he said calmly, but I'm going to make this very clear, so there's no confusion. He faced Greg head on. I'm Daniel Brooks. I own several companies, including hospitality and franchise management ventures. For the last hour, I've been evaluating this diner. Greg blinked. Evaluating? For a potential acquisition, Daniel finished. It's on a portfolio list. Wasn't even supposed to be the priority stop. The diner collectively inhaled. Someone murmured, acquisition? Like, buy it? This place? Greg's face drained of color, then flushed bright red. You're lying, he said, but the conviction was gone. Nobody with that kind of money comes to a dump like this. Daniel's lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. On the contrary, he said, places like this are exactly where investors look. Cheap, old, fixable. He let his gaze slide deliberately around the room. And clearly, poorly managed. Greg's eyebrows shot up. You can't come in here and question. Tell the truth, Daniel cut in. Emily stood motionless, watching all of it like she wasn't really in her own life, but watching it on a screen. She whispered, Daniel. He glanced back at her and his face softened for half a second. You okay? He asked. She nodded, though her insides were shaking. I don't want trouble. This isn't trouble, he said. This is correction. He turned back to Greg. How long have you been treating her like this? Greg snorted. She's a liability. I should have fired her months ago. The words hit Emily like a punch. Liability. Should have fired her. Like all she was risk. No mention of the shifts she covered. No mention of the double work she did. No mention of the days she came in sick because they were short-staffed. Just liability. Daniel's face went cold. Actually cold. The kind of cold that came with decisions already made. You should have fired her months ago, he repeated. Greg shrugged, emboldened by his own cruelty. Yeah, but her situation, you know, the leg, the kid brother, made people feel bad for her, didn't want the drama. But let's be real, she slows everyone else down. The diner recoiled. Someone muttered, that's messed up. Another shook their head. He really said that out loud. Dr. Lawson's fingers tightened around his cane. I should have retired somewhere else, he muttered. This town forgot its manners. Daniel stepped in closer. So close that Greg had to tilt his head up slightly to hold his gaze. "Let's make something clear," Daniel said softly, dangerously steady. "She doesn't slow anyone down. She's been holding this place together." He glanced back toward the counter, where Gina was half hiding behind the register, suddenly very interested in wiping down already clean surfaces. "She runs circles around your staff, on one leg." Greg huffed. "So what? You think you're gonna walk in here with your fancy card and lectures and change everything?" "Yes," Daniel said simply. The single word landed harder than any speech. Greg blinked. Emily's breath caught. The room leaned in. Daniel continued, voice calm, even. "You humiliated a disabled employee in front of customers, blamed her for your understaffing, threatened her wages for an accident your negligence caused, and treated her like trash." He paused. "So yes, things are gonna change." Greg laughed, but it sounded thin. "Oh really? And what are you gonna do? Leave a bad Yelp review?" Daniel's eyes sharpened. "No," he replied. "I'm going to make sure she never has to work for anyone like you again." He turned back toward Emily. "Come outside for a second," he said gently. "Please." Her heart dropped. Am I fired?" she whispered. Greg smirked. "Not yet, but if I have anything to say about—" "You won't," Daniel interrupted, not even glancing high. "Emily?" She swallowed, looking between the two men. Her brain screamed, "You can't walk away. You need this. You need the money. You need the job." Her leg pulsed with a dull ache. Daniel extended his hand, not to take hers, but as an open gesture. "You've done enough apologizing in here," he said softly. "Come outside. Just talk." Every pair of eyes in the diner watched her. It felt like standing on the edge of a diving board, heart racing, staring down at water that might catch you or break you. She took a breath. Then she nodded. "Just for a minute," she said. She untied her apron, hands trembling, and set it on the closest table. The knot that had held her here for years loosened just a little. And with her limp a little heavier, but her head a little higher, she followed Daniel toward the door. As they stepped outside, the bell chimed overhead. Inside, the diner buzzed with murmurs. "What's he gonna do? You think he'll sue the place? Did you see that card, though?" Greg watched them leave, jaw tight, eyes suddenly unsure. He had no idea. The storm had only just started. The cool evening air hit Emily the moment she stepped outside the diner. It brushed against her flushed cheeks like a whisper of relief, though her heart was still beating like she'd sprinted a mile. The sky was turning gold and lavender, the sun dipping low behind the rooftops. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a few dusty trucks, a couple of cars, and the sleek black sedan Daniel had arrived in. Daniel held the door open for her, then let it swing shut behind them. The noise of the diner, murmurs, clinking dishes, scattered conversations, faded into a distant hum. Here, outside, everything felt quieter, safer. Emily crossed her arms over her apronless uniform, suddenly aware of how small she must look next to someone like him. She stared at the ground, at the little cracks in the pavement, avoiding eye contact. "Emily," Daniel said softly, "look at me." She hesitated, then lifted her gaze. His expression wasn't angry, not pitying, not shocked, just present, grounded, concerned in a way she wasn't used to. "Sit with me?" he asked, nodding toward the small bench under the diner's flickering neon sign. She almost said no, instinctively, automatically, but something in his voice disarmed her. So, she nodded. They sat, not touching, not too close, just two people on a worn-out wooden bench while the grease-scented wind drifted past them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Emily stared at her hands, the faint tremor still running through them. The prosthetic leg tingled, half pain, half numbness. She flexed her foot gently, wincing. "Are you hurt?" Daniel asked quietly. "No," she whispered. "Not physically." He nodded slowly, giving her time. Then, "Emily, how long has it been like this?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" He gestured loosely toward the diner windows. "The way they treat you, the workload, the ensue." Her throat tightened. "A while," she admitted. "How long?" She swallowed. "Years." Daniel's jaw clenched. "You should have said something," he said. "To someone. Anyone." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "To who?" she asked. "Greg? The owner? The customers?" Nobody wants to hear a waitress complain, especially not one who limps. "Emily? And I need the job," she said quickly, voice cracking around the edges. "I need it more than people realize." Daniel's eyes softened. "Tell me." She stared at her lap. The words caught in her chest. Then, slowly, like untying a knot she'd kept tight for too long, she began. "My brother," she whispered. "Noah. He's 16, smart, a good kid. He wants to go to college. He deserves to go." Daniel nodded gently. "I pay our rent. I buy his groceries, his clothes. I make sure he stays out of trouble. I cook when I can. I work double shifts because the money never stretches as far as I need it to." She blinked, her eyes filling. "And then, She lifted the prosthetic slightly, the metal catching the evening light. "This thing's older than Noah is," she said. "We got it through a donation program when I was a kid. But prosthetics," she shook her head, "they're expensive. Even the cheap ones cost more than I make in months." Daniel exhaled slowly, the weight of her reality settling over him. "My medical bills pile up faster than I can pay them," she continued. "Maintenance, adjustments, pain meds. Everything costs something." He watched her carefully, not interrupting. "Sometimes I skip meals, so Noah doesn't have to," she admitted, her voice cracking. "Sometimes I walk to work because I can't afford gas. Sometimes the leg hurts so much I have to pretend it doesn't, because if Greg sees me limping too much, he'll cut my hours." Her breath hitched. "I'm tired," she whispered. "Every day, I'm just tired." She tried to laugh it off, wiping her cheeks. "But it's fine. I'm fine. I just keep going. I don't want to." Her voice broke. "I don't want to fall behind." Daniel closed his eyes briefly, the ache in his chest sharper than he expected. He leaned forward slightly. "Emily," he said softly, "you don't have to carry everything alone." She shook her head. "I don't want pity." "This isn't pity," he said firmly. "It's understanding." She looked down again. "I'm afraid if I accept help, it'll prove I'm weak." Daniel leaned closer, careful, respectful, gentle. "You walked into a double shift on one leg," he said. "Weak isn't even in the same galaxy as you." A tear slipped down her cheek. She caught it quickly, embarrassed. "Sorry, I'm not usually like this." "You deserve a moment to fall apart," he said tenderly. "You spent years holding yourself together." That broke something in her, not in a painful way, but in a way that felt like her lungs could finally expand. She let out a long, trembling breath. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared all the time." "I know," he said, "but you won't be anymore." She frowned slightly. "Why do you say that?" Daniel reached into his jacket pocket, not for the card this time, but for a folded piece of paper. He placed it on the bench between them. "What is this?" she asked cautiously. "Hope," he said simply. She opened it with shaky fingers. Her breath caught. It wasn't a check. It was an appointment confirmation. Dr. Henry Lawson, advanced prosthetic consultation, paid in full. Emily's vision blurred. Daniel, why would you? This costs thousands. Because you need it, he said. Because you deserve it. She shook her head, overwhelmed. I can't accept this. Yes, he said softly. You can. I can't owe you. You don't owe me anything, he said gently. This isn't charity. It's humanity. Her throat tightened. Why are you doing all this for me? Daniel met her eyes, voice quiet but full of emotion. Because the world should not break good people just because they're carrying too much. And because someone should have helped you a long time ago. Silence settled between them, heavy, emotional, transformative. Then he added, and I'm not done. Emily stared at him, heart racing. What do you mean? Daniel stood slowly, offering her a hand, not to help her up, but to help her forward. There's something I need to do inside, he said, and you're not going to stand alone when it happens. She hesitated, her fingers hovering near his. Trust me, he said softly. For the first time in years, she did. She placed her hand in his, warm, firm, steady. And together, they walked back toward the diner door, not as waitress and customer, not as helpless and helper, but as two people about to change everything inside. When Emily and Daniel stepped back into the diner, the bell over the door chimed again, but this time, it didn't sound like an ordinary jingle. It sounded like the start of something. Inside, nothing had returned to normal, not even close. Customers were still turned in their seats, whispering. Dr. Lawson stood near the counter, arms crossed, watching Greg like a hawk. The teenagers had stopped laughing entirely, pretending to study their phones. Even Gina, the coworker who usually ignored Emily, looked shaken, maybe even ashamed. And then there was Greg. He stood with his hands on his hips, red-faced, pacing like a man trying to convince himself he was still in control. The moment he spotted Emily and Daniel re-enter, he jabbed a finger toward them. Good, he snapped. You're back. Now let's finish this. Emily, get the mop and stop talking, Daniel said. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. The diner went silent again. Greg blinked, confused. Excuse me? Daniel took a few steps forward. He wasn't towering or threatening, just steady, controlled, and absolutely done with Greg's behavior. You don't speak to her like that anymore, he said. Greg scoffed. She's my employee. I'll talk to her any way I want. Daniel smiled, not kindly. Actually, she's not. Emily stiffened beside him. Daniel, he turned to her gently. Just trust me. Then he faced Greg again. As of 10 minutes ago, Daniel said, this diner is under new ownership. The room erupted. What? You're kidding, right? He bought the place? Greg's jaw fell open. You bought my diner? I bought this diner, Daniel corrected, gesturing around the room. Your diner, legally speaking, hasn't existed since the moment the previous owner accepted my offer. He reached into his pocket and held up a folded purchase confirmation. Signed, processed, complete. Greg lunged forward, snatching the paper and scanning it with frantic eyes. No, he wouldn't sell this place without telling me. Daniel shrugged calmly. He did, and he was eager to be rid of it. Emily watched Greg's face transform from anger to confusion to fear. Daniel continued. Now, as the new owner, I'm exercising my first managerial decision. He pointed straight at Greg. You're fired. The breath left Emily's lungs. Half the customers gasped. One of the teenagers whispered a stunned, "Oh, damn." Greg stared at Daniel like he'd been slapped. You can't fire me. This is my job. You threatened a disabled employee, Daniel said, voice tightening. You talked down to customers. You created a hostile work environment. You violated more labor standards than I can count. Dr. Lawson nodded firmly. He's absolutely right. You can't fire me, Greg repeated, voice cracking. Daniel's expression softened, just enough to look like pity. Greg, he said quietly, you fired yourself the moment you decided cruelty was a leadership style. Two nearby customers clapped under their breath. Someone else muttered, "About time." Greg spun toward Emily, eyes full of wild desperation. "This is your fault," he barked. "You were always slowing things down, always whining." Emily didn't shrink this time, didn't look away, didn't apologize. She lifted her chin. "I'm not the problem here," she said softly. Daniel stepped between them, blocking Greg from taking another step. "Security is on their way," he said calmly. "Please, leave." Greg opened his mouth to protest again, then noticed half the diner had their phones out, recording. He froze. The reality hit him like a cold slap. Face flushed, eyes darting around. Greg grabbed his jacket with shaking hands and stormed out the door, letting it slam behind him. For a long second, nobody moved. Then Daniel turned to Emily, and everything in the diner shifted. He reached into his jacket again, pulling out a sealed envelope. "This," he said, "is for you." Emily stared, terrified and confused. "What is it?" "Open it." Her hands trembled as she tore it open. The first thing she saw was a check. $50,000. Her breath caught in her throat. Gasps echoed across the diner. That's for me?" she whispered. "Yes," Daniel said softly. "To get you out of survival mode, to breathe, to rest, to take care of yourself and your brother." Emily covered her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. "But, Daniel, I can't take, this is too much." "It's not charity," he said gently. "It's what you deserve." She shook her head, crying harder. "I've never had this much money, ever." "Then it's about time," he murmured. She wiped her eyes, trying to process when she saw a second paper inside the envelope. A printed sheet, a letterhead she didn't recognize, a job offer. She blinked at the text through blurry eyes. "Customer Relations Assistant Director," she whispered. "At Brooks Hospitality Group? You'd be perfect for it," Daniel said. "You know how to talk to people. You know how to work through pressure. You're compassionate, reliable, and incredibly strong." Emily's lip trembled. I don't have a degree." "You don't need one," he said. "I hire based on character, and you have more of that than anyone in that diner." Her entire body shook. "This comes with full medical coverage," Daniel added. "Dental, vision, and a new prosthetic. Custom fitted, top of the line." Her knees nearly buckled. Dr. Lawson stepped forward, smiling warmly. "I'll personally handle the fitting, Emily. We'll get you walking without pain again." Emily sobbed openly now, covering her face. Daniel moved closer, his voice soft enough that only she could hear. "You don't need a place that beats you down," he whispered. "You deserve a future that lifts you up." She took several shaky breaths, lowering her hands, meeting his eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he said with a smile. She let out a broken laugh through her tears. "Yes," she whispered. The diner erupted into applause. Not the Polly, but the relieved, joyful, "This woman deserves the world" kind. Emily turned slowly, looking at all the faces that had once ignored her, now looking at her with respect. Daniel extended his hand again, not to shake, not to hold, but as a promise. "You're free now," he said. Let's build you something better." Emily took his hand, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel broken. She felt chosen. She felt seen. She felt like she finally had a future. 3 weeks later, the world looked different to Emily Carter. Not because the town had changed. Its streets were still cracked. Its diners still smelled faintly of burnt fries, and the buses still ran late. No, everything looked different because she had changed. The prosthetic Dr. Lawson fitted her with felt like stepping into a new body. Smooth movement, no squeaking, no slipping, no pain carving itself into her bones. For the first time since she was a child, she could walk with rhythm. Each step felt like reclaiming something life had stolen. On a warm Thursday morning, sunlight filtering through her bedroom window, Emily stood in front of her small mirror, her new work badge clipped to her blouse. Emily Carter, Assistant Director, Customer Relations, Brooks Hospitality Group. The words looked unreal. Too soft, too clean, too full of meaning. Her brother Noah burst into the hallway, backpack half open, cereal bowl in hand. "Em," he shouted, almost slipping on the tile. "Dr. Lawson said you walk better than I do now." She laughed, shaking her head. "I do not." "You do," he grinned. "You even walk cooler." She reached out and ruffled his hair. "Go grab your lunch before you forget it again." He saluted dramatically and darted off. Emily watched him go, tall, bright-eyed, hopeful. And for the first time in years, the feeling blooming inside her wasn't fear. It was peace. It was possibility. Later that day, she walked through the glass doors of the Brooks Hospitality Group headquarters, the security guard greeting her by name. "Good morning, Miss Carter." She smiled. Miss Carter, the girl who once scrambled on sore legs to serve coffee to people who didn't even look at her, was now being greeted like someone who mattered. And she did matter. She walked through the lobby, smooth stride, no limp, and found Daniel waiting near the elevator bank in a charcoal suit. He looked up the moment she approached, a warm smile spreading across his face. "Morning," he said. "Hi," she replied, a little shyly. "Still feels weird being here." "You'll get used to it." His eyes softened. "You belong here." She bit her lip, trying not to blush. "Thank you for everything." "You earned everything," he corrected gently. "I just pushed a door open. You walked through it." They rode the elevator up together. She stepped off into the open-air office, greeted by coworkers who smiled and waved. None of them dismissive, none of them pitying. Respect, real respect. She hadn't felt that in a very long time. By noon, she was reviewing customer service protocols, brainstorming improvements, offering insights nobody expected her to have. But Daniel had been right. She understood people. She understood pressure. She understood compassion. Her life had trained her for this, long before the job ever existed. That afternoon, after a team meeting, she stepped outside to get some air. The city hummed around her. Cars, footsteps, laughter, the soft thrum of living. She stood there for a long moment, closing her eyes, letting the breeze brush across her face. And in that quiet space, her thoughts became a voiceover, soft, reflective, honest. All my life, people thought I was weak because I limped. Emily walked slowly along the sidewalk, sunlight glinting off her new prosthetic. They thought strength meant never falling. But strength is getting up every time the world knocks you down. She passed a cafe window where a young waitress balanced too many plates at once. Emily paused, offering a small, understanding smile. People looked at me and only saw what I lacked. They didn't see the nights I worked through pain, the mornings I woke up scared, but kept going anyway, the brother who depended on me, the dreams I carried quietly, hoping one day they'd matter. She kept walking, kept owning the ground beneath her. For a long time, I thought I had to suffer alone to prove I was strong. But the truth is, strength isn't about suffering in silence. She slowed her steps, her breath steady, her heart open. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept help. Ahead, she saw Daniel stepping out of the building, scanning the sidewalk until he found her. His eyes softened. "There you are." Emily smiled, a real, peaceful smile. When one person believes in you, just one, it can change everything you thought you knew about yourself. Daniel walked toward her, hands in his pockets, warm and steady. I spent years thinking every door was closed to me. But the truth is, I just needed someone to show me one that would open. She looked down at her new prosthetic, smooth, strong, sure, and lifted her head proudly. I finally learned something important. Strength isn't how hard you fight. It's how gently you rise. Daniel reached her side. "Ready for lunch?" he asked. She nodded. "Yeah, I think I'm finally ready for everything." They walked forward together, equal steps, steady strides, side by side. The girl who once limped through a diner with shaky hands now walked into her future with confidence, dignity, and hope.